Hey folks, Wally DM here, and today we're going to take a look at a trap encounter that you could use if your characters are traveling for a few days or if they're exploring the wilderness. And not only that, but make sure that you stay tuned after the first trap, because I'm going to give you two variations of this trap. We're going to call this one the Campfire Ghost. Before we get started, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, please hit the subscribe button, join us over on the Discord, and pick up a copy of my book, Wally DM's Journal of Puzzle Encounters, available now on DriveThruRPG. So this is going to be a fun trap that you could set up on a wilderness adventure or perhaps some type of travel where our characters are going to need to find a place to set up camp and rest overnight. So what we have is a campfire scene, and they're going to be able to detect the smell of something really good cooking, some type of wild game. Now when they arrive on the scene, they're going to see a small fire over in this area, and on this spit is some type of meat that is cooking. Now the strange part about it, and we can do a passive perception of 12 or higher, and a character is going to notice that this is incorporeal. So they can see right through this. They're not able to actually reach out and touch it. Now speaking of incorporeal, we have this figure over here, and this figure has a ghost-like appearance. They're sitting down on a log around the fire. They are a hooded figure, and they have an axe that is laid across their lap. Now the figure will motion for each of the characters to come over and have a seat, and of course there's going to be different areas around here for them to sit. Now regardless of whether they sit or not, this figure is going to stand up, and I would probably pick the most combat ready characters. So perhaps our dragonborn fighter, our dwarf cleric, or our orc barbarian, and they are going to offer their incorporeal axe to them. So they are going to present this axe to them and offer to give it to them. Now, if our Dragonborn refuses to take the axe, then this character or this spirit is going to shrug its shoulders, and it's going to go over to the next character and see if they would like to have the axe. Now, if none of the characters take the axe, it'll sit back down. It will look over at the incorporeal meal that is cooking that the adventurers are not able to access. It will look around the campfire again, and it will sit until interacted with. Now it's up to you when you run this trap, but I feel like this spirit is not going to be able to communicate. So if the characters are trying to ask it questions about the axe or about the meal that is cooking, the spirit meal if you will, it is just going to shrug its shoulders and perhaps maybe offer the axe again as it sits there. So if the characters refuse to take the axe, they can camp out here for the night and nothing's going to happen, and they have successfully avoided the trap. However, if one of the characters accept the axe from the hooded spirit, then that is when our trap is going to kick in. And as soon as they have possession of the axe, it's going to act as a portal, and they are going to get pulled in through this portal, and they are going to arrive in a pocket dimension. Now this pocket dimension is going to look like it's out in the woodland somewhere, and the only object that they're going to have access to is the axe that the spirit gave to them. In this area, no magic is going to work, and all of their tools and items that are on their person are going to be incorporeal, so they're not going to be able to draw their own sword or quarterstaff or what have you. Now as they look around, they're going to be facing off with some type of a wild boar or perhaps whatever monster that you would like to include. So this could be a wild boar or perhaps something that's a little more crazy like a displacer beast, or something mystical like a crazy jackalope or something along those lines. Be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what type of wild game or wild plant creature that you would put out there for your characters to fight. Now we're going to roll for initiative, and we're going to have one-on-one combat, the beast versus the fighter. And if the fighter wins, he's going to rematerialize where this campfire is. The spirit is going to be gone, and the meal that was cooking over the open flame can now be eaten by the adventurers because our Dragonborn had successfully killed it in hand-to-hand combat. And I would probably say that the entire time that the Dragonborn was gone was only a split second. Now there is a chance for failure. Let's say our halfling is the one that grabbed the axe, and they too are going to be pulled into a pocket dimension to fight whatever beast that is going to be a future meal. And let's say our halfling rolls terrible and they end up being killed by this wild boar or whatever you have prepared for them. And if this happens, then we're going to go back to the rest of our party, and they're going to see the little halfling here, and the halfling is now the spirit because he died in the pocket dimension. And when you know it, he does have an axe with him. So this is going to kill that character unless the party helps. So now if our Dragonborn takes the axe from the halfling, goes into the pocket dimension and defeats the boar, they're also going to see the halfling that is still stuck in the pocket dimension, unconscious, and they're able to grab a hold of the halfling and reappear at the campfire again with our meal cooking and the axe in hand, and everyone is okay. And of course, I would allow them to keep this axe that they use in combat, and I would probably make this axe a unique or legendary magic item that they can now add to their character sheet. So that's the basis of the whole trap. The trigger is actually the axe. If a character grabs it, they're going to go through a portal, and they're going to have combat with some type of wild animal. If they defeat it, everything's okay. If they don't, then perhaps one of their fellow adventurers is going to be able to save them. And of course, if they don't take the axe from the strange spirit, then the trap never triggers. Now, if you'd like a second variation of this trap, then we can do something a little bit different. So perhaps our characters arrive at this area. Again, I really like this if they're out exploring in the forest or the woods, the wilderness, or perhaps they're on a 2 or 3 day travel and they stumble across this scene as the sun's starting to go down, things are starting to get dark, and they see this campfire with some type of roast and a spirit that's hanging out beside it. But up to you is how you want to set that up and where you're going to use it. But regardless, let's say our adventurers arrive in this area, they're going to see this spirit that is sitting next to a fire, and it's going to motion for them to sit down, and it's also going to motion for them to grab something to eat. So if our characters want to come over and check this out, this is perfectly good game. It is cooked to perfection, and they're able to partake in eating it. It's no problem at all. And of course, the rest of our characters, they may want to stand around the fire and try to communicate with the spirit. Now, the spirit is not going to speak, but it can definitely hear and see everything that is going on. Now, if they do come up with a clever way to communicate with the spirit, then it is going to tell them that it is the guardian of the weary traveler, and it's here to provide a hearty meal for those that are passing by. Now, of course, our spirit is lying, and I'm going to give them a charisma of 13 and a +6 to their deception. So if our characters want to do an insight check against it, those are the stats I would use for the opposing rolls. Now, after dinner, the spirit is going to rise to its feet, and it's going to offer one of these characters the axe that has been sitting across its lap. So let's say it approaches the Dragonborn fighter, it's going to take the axe in both hands and offer it to the Dragonborn fighter. Now, if this Dragonborn reaches out and grabs the axe, as the Dungeon Master, we're going to ask them to make a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw unless they want to automatically fail. So we're going to give them the option to let the magic take effect. Now, if they decide to roll for the saving throw and they make it, then nothing's going to happen. This Dragonborn fighter is not going to be able to grab the axe. The spirit's going to look at him, look at the axe, shrug its shoulders, and then come over and try to ask someone else if they would like to take the axe from him. But let's say that the character is curious and they want to see what the axe does, so they either fail the saving throw or allow themselves to automatically fail it so they can see what's going on. And if this happens, our trap is going to trigger and the Dragonborn is going to be able to hold the axe. However, when they do, they end up switching places with the spirit. So the spirit comes back and materializes on the material plane, and now our Dragonborn is the incorporeal figure. They are now locked away in some type of ethereal or spirit dimension, and they're not going to be able to escape. They have failed and they are now stuck in the trap. So now that we have one of our PCs that is permanently a spirit, what happens? Do the other characters need to try to convince the once ghost that is now materialized to let their friend go? Perhaps that NPC or that ghost that is now in front of them says, if anything happens to me, your friend is stuck there. Or maybe it's just a 24-hour thing. The spirit or the ghost is relieved for 24 hours and they can go do whatever they want. Of course, this is also a great opportunity to give whoever the player player is of that character that got sucked into the trap and is now stuck in the spirit world, perhaps they can play the role of whatever the spirit became. So now they are in the role of a new character. It's really interesting to see what we could do with this. Is this a permanent effect, a temporary effect, or is there some type of quest we need to do to be able to save our friend? Be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you would do as the Dungeon Master in this scenario. So that is the Campfire Ghost version 1 and 2, a fireside chat for one of them, and a wild boar hunt or what's cooking on the other. I hope you like these traps. Let me know in the comment section below which one of these would you use in your game. Now these are 2 traps that I created, and I created these by using Rory's story cubes. I rolled the dice, I picked 3 of them that I wanted, and in this roll here it was the cloaked figure, the mace, and the campfire or the spit or rotisserie, and this was the 2 trap variations that I invented just by looking at the story dice. I also posted this on the community tab and a lot of you responded, and I really enjoyed reading through your traps. If you haven't done so yet, take a look at the story cubes and let me know what you would have created using the story cubes to create a trap for Dungeons and Dragons. If you would like the written versions of these traps, you can find them on my website, wallydm.com. But if you are a patron of the channel or a member, then you can actually download the PDF. I will provide those to all patrons. And not only that, but you also get to view the video that I put out, the behind the scenes, where I go through the entire setup, give a few clues and Easter eggs, and go through all the miniatures and trains that went into the making of this video. You can find the link to Patreon in the description below. So that's all I have for you today. What did you think of the trap? Is this something that you could use in your game? And if so, what would you do differently? Be sure to leave a comment below and let's get a discussion going. Thank you very much for watching, and on to the next.